you. Yeah, it sounds like it was good.
Yeah, very good.
Good. All right. Let me also in PTG. Okay. Manila got its, we're going to talk about quotas next, and Manila got its quota system because it was forked up from Sender, and Sender got its quota system because it was forked up from Nova. And at least for some of us who came in later into the whole thing, we ran into some kind of pseudo airline reservation system that didn't really work real well. Had a lot of races. We didn't handle the air conditions probably right all the time when we should have.
It's not just you.
And yeah, so it wasn't just us. There's a lot of pain, a lot of suffering. We've talked about replacing it for some time. And it was good news to us to hear that Nova, from whom we inherited this mess, has actually replaced it and moved, from what I understand, to something that made philosophically more sense to me. It wasn't really double accounting and usage and stuff like that, so it wasn't subject to a lot of the problems we had. So we've invited, I reached out to Mel, and Mel brought Dan along too, and we've invited you guys to tell us about what you're doing. We're probably not going to act on it immediately on this cycle, but we want to think about which direction we want to go in and do this. And we also have people in the room from Sender who are interested in the same problem. I used to work on Sender, I know him. I first encountered the joys of the quota system working on Sender. So if you guys would share with us that, and then if you have any time to talk, I know you have to go other places too, but if you have time to talk to us about your experiences with CribSet, and we have time for that with you, that would be very awesome as well.
Yep, sure. So for the quota stuff in Nova, like we've been talking about it for a while. Like instead of tracking quota usages separately in the quota usages table, and also using reservations in the reservations table, the idea was to just count resources directly on the fly. Meaning, like if the quota is about instances, instead of like looking up instances in the quota usages table and like ticking that up and down and etc. as it's being used, just go and count the instances in the database, like in the instances table, just like get a count there instead. And so that was like the basic idea, was just stop.
Did you figure there was initially a fear of a performance hit in doing that, and that's why the information was, I'll use the word cached instead of?
No, I don't think that was, I think that the person that designed that initial quota system was a rocket scientist.
Just wanted to do
literally.
It. Okay, yeah. Fine. I just you can keep me from interrupting. That is curious. Okay, so somebody had a tool they wanted to put in OpenStack. That's what you're feeling about. So
yeah.
And
well, someone just said like build a quota system, and he's like, sweet, I will build a quota system.
I'm gonna build a.
That was that person's like idea.
Okay. So you're getting real usage. When you need usage, you put it in the database.
Exactly. So it's like if you're asking for like creating a key pair, we'll just count how many key pairs do you have, what's the quota limit, and can you create a key pair?
Okay. So single source truth.
Right.
And the assertion that we made that we got enough buy-in from operators to feel like we had cover there was that a lot of the operators, especially big public clouds, were using quota mostly as a stop the bleeding kind of thing, and not a you're paying for 5 instances a month. The quota enforces that you have 5 instances a month, and so therefore we, just counting initially, you have the potential to like overrun by 1 or 2 if you hit it really fast and quickly, but that
So you have So it's more pessimistic than.
It's more optimistic.
It's more optimistic.
And then you can turn on pessimism mode, which basically does that check ahead of time. Looks like we're good to go. Let me create a thing and then count again. And if we count again and fail, then we've overrun, and so then we delete and return no. So.
Oh, okay. Right. So that's what you meant about it's just stop repeating. It's okay if you run over a little bit.
By 2. It's not okay if you run over by 1,000, but it's okay if you run over by 1 or 2.
Right.
Yeah.
And even with the legacy quota system, like for key pairs, for example, if you hit the API in parallel, like all creating a key pair, you could like create 100, even if your quota was like 5 or something like that, because it never checked it again after it created the key pair. So it can't know that now you have to.
This is what I mean by it's not like you were using it wrong. Like we weren't even using it to do all the things it was supposed to do, even though it wasn't. Anyway, but
you said that the pessimism mode isn't universally implemented. There's places that don't do that.
No. There's a like, do you want the double accounting or no?
Yeah, that's part of what we did.
That requires more code in every code path that is quoted.
It does. It does, but we do it everywhere, I guess. But,
It's a config option too. It's like if you don't care about being strict about quotas, then you can disable it to avoid extra checking. But yes, it makes the code kind of ugly since you check it and then you create and then you check it again.
But the way it's implemented, I mean, it's like one call to check. So you just do the call, then create the thing, and then do the call again.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's a ton of code.
And how do you prevent in the pessimistic one to get another race condition where you on the check, the two check and both detect that they have overrun and both repair?
Yeah.
We don't. So you're either optimistic and you could go over by a little bit, or you're pessimistic and you
fail when they should have.
Yeah. So you would need to kind of slow your rate if you need to fill out the last little bit of the bucket. Yeah.
Yeah, and so the implementation, like the way that I did it was I adapted what was there already. So like it surprisingly wasn't as difficult as you would think. Like it was a complete difference in how it works, but I reused like those countable resource classes. I'm sure y'all have the same thing. And then I used the function objects that go with each countable resource. Like I changed everything to countable resources, and then each resource had its count function object like associated with it. So anytime you do like a limit check, it'll use that counting function for that resource. For each resource, you have your own.
The limit check is basically out at the outside, looks the same.
Exactly.
Right? And then you can remove a bunch of reservation and commit abort stuff
so
after
all
you
that
move
stuff
over.
goes away.
All of it.
Yeah, so I deleted every reserve, commit, rollback call from the code and replaced it
Now
with.
we're talking.
Yeah.
But it's like after you convert a class of thing to countable, then you can go remove all the reserve.
Exactly.
So we
rollback.
did those as separate reviews.
Yeah.
It was
So if
many
we want to
reviews,
look,
yes.
if we want to
Many
work off
reviews.
what you've done.
And that actually
we can
made it
track
harder
that.
because it's like you had to make each individual logical piece like work on its own, which was a huge pain because I wrote it as just like a big one thing initially, but
we found a lot of issues as a result of breaking it apart too.
I'm not arguing about that, but
So did you guys think about an implementation that would actually be perfect in terms of hitting the quota number on the nose and stopping, and what would be required to get there? Obviously it was a conscious choice not to do that, but did you have a reason?
So I saw the implementation that we had as the attempt to make it perfect, and a poor attempt, and clearly failed. Running into like negative limits and everything. So I was kind of like encouraging us to go for let's not try to be perfect. It's, perfect in the slow case, not perfect in the fast case. But but my argument was that we didn't try to do that.
yeah, I had the similar thought. Was just make it significantly better, but it's definitely not perfect.
You would need some sort of a global lock to
Yeah.
Which we try not to do in Nova ever.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so I just felt like, or we felt like it was just the trade-off. Just do it this way.
And I assume you, for the database fields that didn't have an index, and you require now an index, you have to create it.
We added some.
For certain things, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're only ever counting things that are scoped by tenant anyway, so it's not like you're counting everything in the database.
Yeah.
You're only counting things you own, so that limits it quite a bit.
Yeah, and we had to add something to basically check your usage against your project limit or your user limit. I don't know if y'all have that distinction where like you can come in and set a quota for a user. It's like the sort of the poor man's nested quota.
Manila and Sender are slightly different in this respect, and that Manila has project and user quotas. Sender, correct me if I'm wrong, has hierarchical quotas, but they've now been turned off by default. But they're theoretically, you know,
That's my
stack them
understanding
as
as
much
well.
as you want.
Yeah.
And then Manila and Sender are probably both different than Nova in that we have in Manila they call share type and in Sender volume type quotas. So you have an interaction. If you're creating shares of a certain share type as a user in a project, those limits get combined.
But they're still scoped by tenant or user or something.
Yeah,
or all
they're
of
scoped by tenant project. And
So the thing is, you count the things, and then you can compare it against as many limits as you want pretty quickly, right?
Yeah,
So
so just
Yeah,
stack,
it's just that,
put the translucent sheets on top of each other.
yeah, it's just the existing logic for the countable resource did not consider like a project limit or a user limit. So I had to change that. Like I added a new.
Has anybody else, for lack of a better word, copied or approached quotas now? Yeah.
No, yeah, this is really recent in Pike. So.
Okay. And did you design it and do it in one release, or were a couple releases, or?
I think it was a couple of releases because
I thought it was the same.
I thought I had to repropose it once.
So one or two.
One or two, yeah.
Releases, so if it's
It was a huge review burden, so
It might have been like we had a PTG or a PTG or mid-cycle in the middle of a release, maybe.
maybe I
don't think it was.
honestly don't remember.
It was
It
a pretty.
wasn't a big multi-release.
Well, not multi-release. I mean, it was a ton of work. But I mean, I felt like it went pretty quickly. It was like,
Yeah,
Do you have any
considering-
work in Manila? I'm just teasing you. I mean, obviously, we love to have contributors, but
yeah.
And then, do you guys know what Neutron is doing now on quotas and how it connects? If you think of the lineage of the storage projects having gotten their stuff from Nova.
As far as I know, it hasn't changed. I don't.
But they didn't import anything from us, and
Oh, they
thing,
just-
They
so
just did their own thing in the first place.
I'm pretty sure. I mean,
Yeah,
they were never a fork of Nova Network like you guys were at Low Volume,
right.
I was just gonna. Sorry, I was like thinking about this a second ago. But another thing I was gonna mention is that changing to doing it this way like eliminates database writes when quota checks are happening, because I don't know, during that reserve process, it actually does a quota sync. So it's like you're getting database writes in every quota check. And I think some operators actually ran into like issues with, their database getting hammered with all these like writes from quota checks.
Yeah.
And so this turns it into all reads, which I would imagine would make a
Definitely, yeah.
big difference.
Yeah. What are you guys, Sender guys, thinking about this?
When we were coming in, it just told us that there is some talk about kind of an Oslo looking into creating a generic
For
implementation
for
For the
quotas.
enforcement.
Well,
Oh, really?
there've been several semi-utopian, we're going to use quotas as a service for everybody projects over the years. One of them is to do hierarchical quotas for everybody, probably leveraging Keystone.
Yes.
There
That was about the limits.
that's the limits, yeah.
Yeah. But I
The
mean,
limits and accounting are pretty separate concerns, actually.
Yeah.
They are.
That's why I'm kind of not sure what a unified version
Well, it would be two things, like unified limits in Keystone with one level hierarchy is the latest news I've heard is what they're thinking. And then on the other side, I think we could have an Oslo library that could provide the bits for like enforcement, like basically like the stuff that I did, I could see being able to like forklift it out and you could like on your side, you define the resources and then the counting functions and then just call the limit check that's in Oslo, I would think, unless I'm missing something.
I don't know. It seems like there is a lot of reuse for us trying to reuse all of the plug points that we're doing our checks. But like if you didn't have that already, like you're just counting things, right? Like I don't know. It doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of reason to bring in even the countable resource type stuff because it's just counting, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the real benefit you would get is the logic and the limit check. I mean, dealing with merging the project and user limit.
Figuring out what limit to compare that count to, totally.
But yeah, most of it would be, it'd be a pretty light library.
Like a single function and single file that says if A less than B. Yeah.
Okay, maybe that's a bad idea.
Well, as long as we can rename it and put dots to underscores and stuff every now and then change the requirements. Then we'll have it.
Yeah, it'll be one of those projects where all the commits for single release or requirement sync bot patches.
So at Ericsson, you have problems with quotas. Have you noticed any? You guys run Sender.
Yeah, no, we haven't used quote.
You don't use quote at all?
No.
Okay. That's where the problems.
Yeah.
It's not broken if you don't use it. And I have a comment on its features, and I'm afraid we could have a performance impact, at least for Sender and Manila, because we store everything in one database.
Yeah.
Actually, I just tried to import this feature in Sender and test the feature in my environment. But when we try to create tens of thousands of volumes in our environment, the performance could be very, very slow.
Do you have tenants with tens of thousands of volumes?
Yes.
Why?
Because we are focused on public cloud. That's possible.
These guys are from Huawei and
Yeah.
a big public cloud.
Yeah, but a single tenant with tens of thousands of volumes?
Yes.
Okay, well.
So does that mean we need to fix some database indexing or?
Yeah, I mean, it will depend highly on what you're counting and what's indexed.
I just counted the volumes ID.
Yeah.
Can you define slow? Is it like multiple seconds or just like tens of milliseconds per request?
With 200 concurrence.
200?
Yes, 200 concurrence.
What indexes did you create? Because I looked into this pretty quickly, and the indexes we have, they are not adequate to do the actual filtering that you would need to do the count. So the count would be terrible. The performance of the count right now with the indexes that we have is going to be terrible. That's why I asked.
Yes.
I assumed you have created the index because otherwise you would have to actually read the whole database for each check if you don't have the right filters, the right indexes. So maybe what you imported didn't get all the indexes, only a couple of them. I don't know how you did it.
I just count the volumes ID. I saw that we had index on ID, volumes ID.
But volume ID is a string, right? Or are you talking about the row ID?
Yes, volumes ID.
Wouldn't you need to also filter by the project, by the tenant, the tenant, the user?
It's already filtered by the project ID.
It's really, and we have an index on the project, the ID, and everything. I don't remember which.
Maybe that's something worth looking into.
Counting 10,000 rows in SQL should not be a very large, heavy thing. So, yeah.
But I could be wrong. That's why my test result shows that it's not that good as I expected.
So what was the like performance impact? You said it was slower and then
About 4 times bigger than current quota system.
It seems really, I can't really imagine, especially given that it's like no disk IO to do this versus all the rights that it takes to do all the reservations and commit rollback type stuff. And rollback also generates you don't ever roll anything back really, unless you do it in a pessimistic check. But
Do you have large counts in Nova today?
What?
I mean, you were talking about measuring
No,
counts of volumes.
I tested this feature in Cinder.
yeah, what release are you running? What release are you running?
No, I write my test features. I upload the test features and test this in the environment.
yeah,
Right.
So you already prototyped it. It's not committed to it.
No, I know.
So you're
I'm
testing
wondering if you are running Nova past Pike and maybe you're already running counting quotas in Nova. Are you?
I imported this feature in Cinder.
I know.
Everything is tested on
I know.
Cinder.
Yeah.
Not test on Nova. We didn't test on Nova.
Okay. So we committed this several releases ago. So I'm just wondering if you guys have done pre-production testing of Nova and noticed an issue in Nova already as well, or if you're not that far, or
Not testing because Nova didn't have much resources than Cinder.
so you have a tenant with tens of thousands of volumes, but not tens of thousands of instances.
Actually, for our product use, we don't use cells. We have our own architectures.
This has nothing to do with cells. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, not at all.
Are you counting as many rows in the database for Nova as for Cinder?
Cinder.
We have Cinder over here, Nova here. You have a lot of rows in the database for Cinder.
Yes.
You also have a lot of rows in the database for Nova.
We haven't tested this for Nova.
Yeah, I know you haven't tested it.
Yes.
But you're running in production for several releases in a public cloud.
Do you have any tenants with tens of thousands of instances?
Because if you, you don't. Okay. Because I was saying, if you did, you would have been testing it without knowing it because it's in production.
Yeah, I'm also not sure why you would have like a factor of 10 difference in the cardinality of your instances and your volumes. You know what I mean?
Worth understanding, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a lot more we could talk about here, and thank you for telling us about that. We want to take advantage of your time since you're here for a few more minutes to talk about PrivSep as well. So we haven't done anything with switching from root wrap to PrivSep. We have some understanding perhaps, although we'll turn to review it, of the theoretical advantages of doing it, but we're also interested in practice.
It's security, so it's all theoretical.
Yeah, where it actually gave you something or where it was a pain, and the Cinder guys have some experience to share here too, but we'll let you go first.
Okay, so I think primary theoretical advantage, primary realizable advantage is performance. So if you go and profile running a command under root wrap, you'll start to wonder why it takes 3 seconds to run an ls command under root wrap, and if you actually do all the profiling, it's like the import statements on root wrap, like just sucking in mounds of Python and getting it all set up to then exec an ls. It's kind of ridiculous. With PrivSep and a daemon running all of the time that you communicate basically over a socket with and say, hey, go run this thing and give me the result, you save all of that startup time. So there's actually some significant benefit performance-wise to projects that run like 50 commands in order to set up something. So when we're doing IP tables setup and manipulating image files and stuff, and I assume, with you guys running lots of iSCSI or Cinder, lots of iSCSI setup things, all of those are taking a hit to start up root wrap each time.
So maybe this would be a good time to ask the Cinder people what their experience with performance with PrivSep was, which is kind of interesting. It's a different aspect of it than the setup of Teardown.
So for Nova, are you using PrivStep in any way other than just calling command line commands? Do you actually have like code running?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we also save not having to exec MV and CP and stuff in certain places. Yeah, absolutely.
Here, it's where it gets funny because preset, from my point of view, it's terrible for performance in C.
Really?
Because it doesn't do anything in parallel. It can only perform operations sequentially. So when you do an ASCSI login, if it's slow, nothing else is running. So you have an ASCSI connection, a path that is down. It can take 2 minutes to find out that it's down. Since it's completely blocked.
Yeah.
Just wait for that operation.
Good point. Yeah. So if you have something that is, gonna run for tens of time slices longer than it takes to do setup, then absolutely sure. So I don't, hadn't even considered that, because most of what we're doing is moving files around, deleting things, sometimes a chown type of operation or something like that. So
for that, it's great.
Yeah. And so Neutron also, I think, gets a huge benefit because they're running just IP tables commands all day long, bridge setup and these sorts of things. And so there were tens of seconds in one setup procedure just saved by root wrap setup. So fair enough.
If you're running Python code, yeah, indeed, it's really beautiful.
Well, Python code or MV or something. Yeah. Fair enough. So the other benefit is root wrap was expecting everybody to tightly define and cultivate the root wrap filters file to be extremely tight and only the things that you need. And Nova and many other people shipped with, you can run DD with any argument. So game over, right? We had issues during upgrade, trying to merge those filter files, especially if an operator had changed one for any reason, or when we had to add something that new Nova had to be able to run, but it was supposed to be able to run with the old root wrap file, but it couldn't because it didn't have it, whatever. With PrivStep, you're just writing Python functions basically and defining an interface that when I call into this function will be running with privilege. And
what does control where the boundary is, what can't do?
So as part of the PrivStep import and setup, you give it a namespace, a module namespace, basically, that says these are anything under this module namespace I'm willing to run as root. And so we don't put things directly in the libvirt driver that can run as root. We put something in nova.privsep.virt.py, put a function in there, and then we just call it from.
But my understanding of the root wrap was it was one of the things it was designed to defend against was someone who could modify the code to the product itself. Like if you had taken over the Python process through some sort of remote exploit, you could basically write new code inside Python.
Right.
The root wrap is sort of a barrier around how out of control that can get. Right?
Except not if the filter file says you can run anything with any arguments.
Well, right. I mean, the filter is the boundary. So if the filter lets you do it, you can do it.
Right.
But at least the filter is outside the control of someone who can modify the code in the Python process.
Right. So you can't.
How does that work in PrivStep? If someone is able to change the Python code, can they do anything?
If someone is able to change the Python code on disk, you mean?
Or in the running process? I mean,
in the running process,
dynamic,
no.
so you can once you have control, you can start hacking everything.
Right. So when you start up, either you fork or you start up separately the PrivStep side of your code, and the stuff that's in that privileged namespace is running there and is not in the same process space as Nova. So if you are able to gain access to the Nova interpreter and start, injecting your own code and executing it, you're not affecting anything that can run on the PrivStep side. And so basically the function signatures of the things that you define as PrivStep are the only in and out of that other daemon over that socket that you can go.
Okay, so you're relying on the fact that you've already forked and the thing that's privileged is separated.
Or is started by systemd completely separate from you and you found each other and you communicate with it,
Is that something that you're doing?
What?
Spinning up the PrivStep part separately from it?
So that's the one thing that we still use root wrap for, is starting up the daemon. And so there's a couple of different arguments for and against doing it, both from a, there are certain ways that you can get yourself into trouble if the privsep daemon dies, like if it crashes after you have started it and you no longer have privileges to restart it, you're kind of toast, right? So some people want to start it with systemd because systemd will notice that it died, restart it, but then Nova has to have a way to find the new one. Other people are like, well, if it dies, we should just restart Nova anyway, and then we'll get a new one. You know, so we have that's the last thing that we use root wrap for. Yeah.
Perfect.
Docker and Kubernetes.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Is there more to talk about on this for now? I mean, where are you guys in Cinder on that? What, have you converted everything in root wrap to privsep?
We have converted all of Vert, and that means most of compute as well. I think we still have Nova Networks is kind of frozen, and it's not for sure. But
well, it sounds like the two can coexist, and maybe for Cinder's case, those really slow ones stick with root wrap.
Well, yeah,
things that are fast.
well, they can coexist, so I was curious what you had.
they can, and they currently do, because we start the daemon with root wrap. But the goal, of course, is to get rid of root wrap entirely.
And then Cinder has done. What's the name of the library again? Between Nova and Cinder, I'm forgetting.
Brick.
We're all walked away and Brick went out of my head. But you've converted Brick, right?
Well, it uses a lot of the root wrap style calls, which are all done through privsep.
Using privsep to just run things as root, you mean? Yeah. Well, that's fine.
So yeah, there's no degree. Everything's root or not. You're not really using
We don't use any of the actual native code stuff there.
What they mean is they're basically just execing binaries, and they're not running Python code as privileged. But there is another detail there, which is the thing that got us over a hump where we were able to get consensus and actually move forward on this in the last cycle, which is privsep was designed by a security guy with all the theory in his head. And in Linux, the theory, which has been around since the 90s and nobody ever really utilizes fully, is that there's all these different capability slices through the kernel, right? And so the goal was that privsep daemons you would have multiple privsep daemons started up for each kind of combination of capabilities that you wanted, which is very similar to people will cultivate the root wrap filters file. And so you end up with all these daemons, and you call to the daemon that you need based on what things the function that you're using declares that it needs. And so capnetadmin goes to that daemon and runs that thing. The problem is that that is not well defined in Linux externally from a user perspective. And so we started out with like 6 daemons with various levels of capability for networking things and block things and whatever. And to figure out what those are and which silo your thing needs to go into basically requires auditing kernel code. And Python developers are not going to do that. And so we had this sticking point where people weren't happy with that, and they didn't know which thing needed to go and where, and people weren't able to write new privsep things. And so the deal was, screw it, we're going to have cap sysadmin, which is basically root, as one daemon, lump everything into there, and then if the magical root wrap fairy that never showed up to cultivate the filters file does show up and wants to, slice some things off into other daemons, then cool, but otherwise we're not doing that. And suddenly the toilet flushed and everything went through. So
that's what you're doing.
I think I think we intend to do that in Cinder. So I prototyped the native code privsep stuff for the LIO iSCSI target, and all it really has to do is write to /sys, I think. And so I wrote some file that said you can have this 2 or 3 capabilities. It seems good, but we haven't gotten far enough in to figure out what happens when we have 10 different sets of capabilities. Just because nobody's been doing the native code stuff in Cinder for.
We also said that if any
one method call That's it. And that's the Python is break. And it was because already it was new code, but the old code, everything is just calling to in the same way that we were before. There's only one call to one unlink that it's actually Python code. That's the only thing we have actually in the new way of doing things.
But what takes the place of the filters file in the new system? Is it effectively, now it's in the Python code, what you can and can't do? So
You define some priv-sub contexts, which for us is one, which is sysadmin. And then you decorate methods in something underneath your privileged namespace with this is a thing that requires context foo, which is our sysadmin. And that's pretty much it. Then you write Python code in there.
So like the bad example of you can DDS root with whatever arguments you want. So let's say you do need to DDS root, and you do it in a new world. You have some Python code that evokes DD with just the arguments you want, and then even if someone can take over the interpreter, they can invoke that flavor of DD but no other flavor of DD.
So for example, we would have a thing where we need to well, if we needed to DD between two devices, which is not a very good example, but the parameters are taking dev1 and dev2, and we construct a command line of dd/dev/ and then something, we assert that there's no slashes in the parameter that you gave us, right, of both parameters, and we construct the command line such that, we're not just passing something to be shell interpreted from dd and actually executing it and not.
And that's just Python code.
It's just Python code.
So at the very least, the filters file goes away.
So people will need to delete a device. So you give them a device name and they construct the thing which is open//class block device name /node/delete, and then write one into it and close. Like it's very Python-y instead of we're gonna exec bash with echo to whatever, which is what it used to be.
Which is what we have
right
now. Yeah.
Right. So it's significantly better than that. And it also makes, it's much easier to be fine-grained there than to be fine-grained in a file full of filters where you're trying to come up with regexes that will tolerate the things to DD that you need.
So is Sender using PrivSub outside of Brick and the actual services now?
Well, we just use it to run reroute kind of commands.
Yeah.
So technically we're using it, but we're not using it for any of the stuff that actually can do.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in the end, the problem probably with you as well, the problem that Cinder has is that if you have operations that can take a long time, moving to preset is a problem because you will get a bottleneck, right?
Right. So we need to think about where those are in the code and whether they're, the generic driver's going to have a bunch of them, but
But this is a lot of why Cinder's not using it more yet, because I started doing work on this, but until we optimize this performance problem, it's not really a great idea to go ahead with it.
But it seems like you could identify the subset that are definitely fast. Get those working with PrivSub, and then the ones that are questionable or slow, leave them under root rep until you have a better solution. But at least you're making forward progress.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like it's directionally the right answer.
The problem I see is that who is maintaining PrivSub? Nobody. So if there's no maintainer, there's never going to be.
that issue.
Who's maintaining root rep?
Yeah, but it works fast for me.
Well, but not for most everyone else. You guys have had upgrade problems with the root rep filters file too, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
We only interact with it.
We basically burned out the PrivSub guy and he rage quit. And we kind of burned out the root rec guy and he refused to work on it anymore. So we're like 0 for 2.
So who do we want to burn out next?
We just have.
And we'll be leaving now, so.
We just need to convince someone to actually do the parallel operation.
Yeah, I'm kind of worried that might be a bit of a problem if it's designed around fairly synchronous, over the Unix socket kind of protocol where there's no way to like say, okay, I'll work on that and I'll get back to you. Here's the task ID.
Oh.
I think it's very synchronous. So we haven't encountered that, so I hadn't thought about it. So I wish you guys luck.
Well, thank you. We may be looking at those photo patches at some point.
Cool.
So there's a good chance on the quota stuff that we're gonna try to work on that.
Pardon?
We're probably gonna be working on that in Rocky Center.
Oh, you are? Okay.
And I just checked.
And you think you're gonna look at those patches and,
I don't know, maybe not me, but someone.
I mean, you plural, y'all, all y'all?
And yeah, that I checked the senior code, and I think we don't even have an index for the project ID field and the user ID. So when you're changing the quotas and trying to calculate, just by filtering by project ID, you do have to
Examine
rename
a row,
it.
yeah.
So that's going to be right there.
That sounds pretty
terrible.
yeah.
The performance there.
Well, I think we'd be interested in collaborating with you maybe if we look at the stuff.
John is excited about fixing.
Yeah, I think,
He is now.
Getting excited.
So thank you again. You set a wonderful precedent here, coming in here and sharing your wisdom.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We're going to go deliver bad news to another project.
Okay.
It's worse news.
All right. Well, I think that was helpful. I don't know that we have concrete plans yet as to how much we're working on quotas for print stuff in this project cycle. Do people have thoughts about that on the Manila side?
Well, quotas are definitely bad.
You know, quota stuff is.
Yeah. No, I would like to. So if you identify who's working on it on the sender side, I'd like to keep talking and see if we, this is a subject that's been a bee in my bonnet for some time, and I've never.
Well, John Bernard started to pick up on the quota stuff like right now, and it's caused us customer problems for like 4 years. I mean,
Well, yeah.
big ongoing thing for a long time. So.
Right. Okay. So it's Bernard.
I remember you brought it up in Austin.
Well, I was working on sender then, and just came over to Manila for I had. I probably have the same customer cases that I have now, working with certain financial institution in Arizona or something. We were working and they're
People have been
writing
complaining about
scripts
it.
for
It's
them
like
to
ISOs.
correct their quotas and reconcile it. Anyway, so yeah, I'm motivated to move on that, but we'll talk about it more.
It sounds like quota is the worst pain point in
Yeah, the root wrap thing sounds like something where we ought to try to identify some low-hanging fruit where we would benefit from trying out PribSep to replace it and do it, and then where we're not going to incur this performance penalty.
But it sounds like the Nova guys did it specifically because of the performance issue with the root wrap. So as long as we're not seeing that, we're not really motivated.
We're not particularly motivated to move in that direction. My thought is that it could potentially turn into a cross-project initiative at some point, and if we're ahead of the game, that's great. It was discussed at this time around, this potential cross-project initiative, but I think it's likely not to. They're looking for things that can be achieved in one cycle in every project. So I think we're probably safe for a while because of this.
Yeah,
Sort out the whole system problem first.
Making it a cross-project thing isn't that useful unless you're going to really demand people try to do the native Python code part of it.
Yeah.
Because that's where it really starts to be useful. If you do what we did for the first step and just call root rep commands with it, then you haven't really gained a whole lot.
You've gained a cosmetic.
Or even what the Nova guys were doing, where everything is capsys admin, you don't really gain a whole lot doing that either.
Well, they gain the speed.
Well, we didn't have that problem in Cinder.
Yeah, that's what Tom is saying. If we don't, or Ben, I don't know, he's saying if we don't have the performance speed,
Right.
do we really care all that much? If we're still going to do
We
it?
care because it's a way better architecture for how to run privileged code. But
If except for the fact that it's synchronous.
Right.
You want to
Yeah. Don't know that part of the
If you fix that, then it is a no-brainer.
Yeah. But that's an implementation thing, process that needs to be fixed. I think the general idea is pretty good. It's,
So I think I'm going to suggest for the schedule that we fit in that we have 45 minutes before we take a break and go down for our team talk. So we're a little ahead of, so we knew that root wrap and quotas could be big, long topics, but they didn't take as much time as I anticipated, even though I think it's good discussion. One topic that it might be useful to pull in now would be Amit's topic about improving the documentation for new driver contributors. And that's something that has been of interest to the Sender team as well, although you don't need to feel obligated to stay, but you should feel free to.
Yeah, but maybe you'd like to raise a topic that is relevant for Cinder.
I think it is what I'm saying. Because I used to work on Sender, and that was also a pain point. Didn't you also do a driver for Sender this cycle?
No, it was a peer of mine, actually.
A peer of yours.
Yeah.
And did he or she find it much easier than working in Manila in terms of building?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, so my experience is that Manila and Sender are similar for new driver contributors, and that most of them say they would have liked to have had better guidance and documentation when they came in to do new drivers. And also CI setup, third-party CI setup, and so on, which so is it something you're prepared to talk about with the team now?
Yeah, basically, I wrote it down here, I think.
Yeah, we can move it around in the Etherpad, but I'm thinking it will fit in the first. Oh, yes, and we also need to close on the team dinner, which is a subject.
Oh, you want to discuss
Yeah,
that
why don't we
first?
do that quickly, team dinner, and then,
Anyone who's coming needs to put the
What's
name
going on with the...
yeah, put your name on the Etherpad, and then we are going to be, somebody to make a reservation, and we need to close on where. Okay, so yeah, thanks, Ben. So 2 topics here quickly, the team dinner, which people from Sender are welcome to crash, but you need to put your name on the Etherpad. And Amit had a suggestion for a nearby place. And Ganso, do you have a competing suggestion?
So Ben and I were discussing this yesterday, and we got Ben regarding what's the name of that folk again? That person? Yeah, he suggested that we don't go to Temple Bar because it might be a tourist trap. What do you think?
I have no opinion on that. I don't trust.
It's actually what they told us on the free tour.
So
Yeah, they told that as well, to you as well.
Maybe if we know of a good place there. Then.
Yeah, so the Cinder guys booked a place close to the Temple Bar area. But what may bug some people is actually the trip there, not really the place, right?
I don't mind that. Just call it.
The size of her legs, man. All right, so we're going tonight, and who is bothered by walking like half an hour or taking a cab to the place and back? Yeah.
30, 35 minutes, maybe. Depends how fast you walk.
Yeah.
Where are you guys looking at going?
We were looking into the old store. Let me find it again. Store. The old storehouse. I was looking into this place. No. If more people are skeptical, we could go to the same place as Cinders.
The same distance, right?
A little bit farther. Or we could go to McGrahan's, right?
With McGrath, it's nearby.
Nearby.
Yeah.
And you've been there yesterday?
I visited the place yesterday. They had no food, but they have no food on Mondays. Which
Okay.
is a strange thing. Don't sell food on Mondays, yeah. So I just went on and ate pizza, but they said they can accommodate us today if we book in advance. So.
And alternatively, there's the place nearby as well where the women of OpenStack are going to have their happy hour tomorrow.
Oh, that one, I didn't think about that one.
It looks like a nice place. I looked it over.
They were also closed yesterday.
Okay, so we have too many choices right now. How do we narrow them down?
Random choice.
I'm pretty agreeable, so I want us to
fine with everyone.
I want us to get to it.
Looks like the closer one is easier for everybody because you don't have to walk 30 minutes or take a cab. And well.
Yeah, so if people is the transportation issue a strong issue for anyone? John,
I choose the closer one.
You would choose the closer one.
Yep.
So there were one or two close places suggested?
Yeah.
We had one that you walked in, you thought would be a good choice.
Yeah, we still need to check.
The food looks okay now, and
yeah, this one.
Is this the one?
And you would be happy to book it?
Yeah, I can do it and try and call them and see if they have room.
Okay, we are deciding on McGrath's.
Yeah, let's just do that unless somebody has a strong sense. If you want to go to the Sender one, you can probably crash the Sender place. But,
yeah, that's what I figured.
So you get your variety, and if you want to go to the one that women are exactly going to, why not go to it when there are women there? I mean, I can't help myself. Here's how Tom was. My HR people came after me Victoria will make sure I actually behave myself.
All right.
So it'll be like 10, 11 people.
How many people are going? Can I just consider the ones that is in the Etherpad?
Yeah, we asked people to add their name.
Yeah, if you want to get added to the Etherpad, do it yourself right now. If you don't have the link, it's in the Manila channel.
When do we go?
Let's see. So there's a little reception thing that ends about 7.
There are actually 2 events tonight.
What are they?
There is a karaoke or single on something, which is later.
So that's late after you get.
And there's something at the museum, 5.
Yeah, from 5 to 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So
we'll catch
from
that.
my point of view, some people might want to do the 5 to 7. So we could do it at 7. Say dinner at 7 or 7:30.
Okay, so 7.
7 is fine, right? Because it's just. You probably only get one beer free drink anyway before it runs out.
Okay.
And then if you want to do karaoke, you can slip out and go to karaoke.
Karaoke lasts until 11, so we have time.
Karaoke people will get drunk and go late.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll tell you my karaoke story sometime, but in brief, I didn't know any words, so I said I will pick Hey Jude when I was compelled to do karaoke in Japan. Do you know how long Hey Jude? And you're standing there with the same old words for like in a whiskey bar where I was one of 2 gaijin, and everybody else is just laughing at it the whole time, somewhat politely. But, it was miserable. So yes, do we have? I think I just told that story. Even though I said I will someday. That's about it. Yes, Victoria, you put the link in there. Thank you. Okay, we're testing Amit's multitasking capabilities.
I'll do this later, I think, in the break. I'll call them.
Okay, awesome.
Okay.
Thank you. Let's take a let's take up your topic of documentation. We have 35 minutes.
Yeah. So the topic is improving the documentation for new driver contributors. So that specifically talks about documentation for third-party driver contributors, not for contributors to the Manila API or the Manila UI or stuff like that.
Yep.
And that's specifically from my experience as a new driver contributor for the driver I wrote for Infinidat. As what I mainly ran into is that there is an existing documentation in the wiki and
In the wiki?
in the source. No, there is in the source code. There is in the wiki or the documentation website. I'm not sure which one. It covers the minimum requirements.
I did it, yeah.
Okay.
So you know who to insult.
Okay. No, I'm not saying that it's bad, but I did find out that most of the time I ran out. I had to read some other vendors' code while to find out what each method needs to return, what is the format of the return values, whether the method needs to return a value or not.
Yeah, that document that I worked on wasn't made to cover that, as it's more high level. Like it's supposed to explain what you're supposed to do in each method, a general view and a guidance, and details should be in the doc strings of parameters or return values.
Did you look at the doc strings?
So I did look. There were still some things that I had to go over through some other vendors' code, like NetApp or Red Hat, Dell, to find out more. And I do think that it still requires some more work.
I mean, what was it, because the doc strings weren't well written, or because there was just...
It was not clear what each return value meant, for example, how it integrates into the rest of the Manila flow.
Yeah, I'm wondering where the improvement needs to go. Does it need to go into making better doc strings, or do we need like another whole document that just walks you through this?
I wrote like the first driver for Cinder. The hardest part was to understand what was coming inside the parameters. You just receive a listener, and you don't know what might come from there. What is
for example, there is the share object.
Volume, but you don't know what the volume is.
Exactly.
Yeah,
today we have the object, but at that time we didn't. But
yeah, that's for example that you have the share object that comes or the snapshot that comes. Do you need to address it with square brackets, or do you need to address the attributes, or how do you need to address it? Which attributes do you have? And this is also something that had me looking inside the code, inside the Manila sources, which is not that bad, but I think it would have been much easier. The other thing is the third-party CI, which actually Gotham helped me with. But we spent weeks making that work. And it all came down to setting up some environment variables and stuff like that, which I'm not sure if it's all covered somewhere specifically for Manila.
So there used to be some people on the infra team who would support people making third-party CI systems. And when we introduced the requirement that everyone needed to have one, those people were still around, and the theory, I think, the theory was if you had a problem, we had names of people who could help you. So if those people have gone away, then we have an issue, because
Eric, you worked on driver interface stuff on the Cinder for a while, didn't you?
A little bit.
That was one of the many things that have come, but it's not totally completed either, right?
Yeah, I think we still don't have a document or anything that really defines all the ins and outs of what you need to know. You know, what the details of the parameters are and how they're used and what they actually do to return back to the market.
Yeah.
So there's a whole bunch of stuff in there that if somebody's going to write a driver, they probably just have to look at other drivers to see how to do it.
So that's consistent with what you're saying, and probably your colleague would say they have the same experience.
Yeah.
And so we've got some checks now that do kind of a unit test-y, make sure this driver appears to conform to the API kind of thing. But think we're real lacking in how do you actually properly write a driver kind of stuff.
So I mean, I don't think people are here to argue with your finding that there's a gap. I mean, Rodrigo's done the best job of addressing it so far, but we would all agree, I think.
So what I want to say that maybe all of this info exists either in the docs or the wiki or maybe even in IRC. But as a new contributor, I didn't know first who to address, where to read this info. And I really think that the first thing that I should find on Google when I look for contributing a new driver to Manila should be the simplest guide, like step 1, step 2, step 3. Like just keep it simple and stuff like that. And another thing was when actually contributing the first patch, I missed lots of files, like the release notes and adding the docs, documentation, and it came up in the next patches. But I really didn't know that I should contribute also these files.
Some kind of checklist there for you.
So maybe it exists, but I really don't know where to read.
There is one in our docs, but as you said, it's not something that would be easy to find just Googling steps. Like, so maybe the steps page is what we need.
The top level README should say if you're
a driver contributor,
go here.
Yeah.
And then there's another document in the source tree that has all the other links you need.
Does Manila have a dev rep?
Yeah, we
tree
do.
like syndicates?
Yeah. And that's where the existing docs of this flavor are. But the problem is if you just go to GitHub/OpenStack/Manila, you wouldn't find that quickly.
Well, and I think he read the documents in DevRef too, and so.
Yeah, but the rest mostly people would like to contribute to the API of Manila.
Yeah, the DevRef is focused on people developing the core.
Yeah.
And just wants to write a driver, it needs a subset of that documentation.
Yeah. For instance, going here in the DevRef index, we see most of the topics explained in detail, but really the release notes, for instance, is down there, the commit message, and then there is documentation and a unit test that you should run and how to run the Tempest tests. Doesn't say anything about the CI. So the CI is definitely one that we should include here. But what we possibly really need is a welcome page for contributors, just highlighting what
driver contributors.
Yes, driver contributors, highlighting what they should look for, because I agree that sometimes it's not easy to go to all this documentation the dev have and realize what you need and what you don't. You may miss something.
So how do we make progress on this?
Improving docs.
Yeah, but how do we improve the docs?
In other words, we need a volunteer to write that landing page and add a link off the README.
So,
and we could create a wiki page to link to that, because some people just land at the wiki instead of this.
Okay, yeah. I mean, yeah. We need the page with all the information, and then as many pointers to that page as you can get.
Yeah, so Cinder has a wiki page, it's just like that. You basically just copy paste it. Swap Manila for Cinder, because like almost all of it's the same, right?
Wait. Yeah, where?
No, if you go to the Cinder wiki page, there's a how to contribute a driver.
Yeah, don't do that, because part of the discussion from the first contact / upstream institute is we don't want to be wikis anymore. We want to be moving that content over to the website.
Okay. So let's have wiki bias, but let's
we agree, but we just need a pointer.
Yes, the content is fine, but don't create another wiki.
Right. So drop the word wiki. Look at that thing, the page that must not be named, and get the content out of it and put it under DevRef. For the main index of DevRef will point to, so you want to contribute a new driver is one of the items. And then we could start by stealing that with a send command, and then look at what perhaps get I mean, others to look at it and see what gaps we have at that point.
And actually, that's good that this is coming up, because part of what I would like to do is, right now you come in as a new contributor, and I'm not sure where you land for Manila, but for Cinder, it's just at the full documentation page, which sucks. And I want to add a landing page, and I would like it to be consistent between Manila and Swift. It's on board with this too. Where you come in and you've got a nice friendly page that makes it easy that, do I want to start contributing a driver? Here's the documentation I need there. For us, maybe go to the wiki page, hopefully I migrate that all at the same time.
So are you working on this in Cinder or somebody else on the project?
So I would like to work on it this release.
So we don't know who's working on it yet.
So someone in Swift is doing some.
So Matt Oliver is working it, I think, for Swift. I think honestly they're waiting to see what we do and then copy it.
What I'm wondering is, do you have enough cycles, not to do the whole thing, I'm not saying that, but to do this initials, copy, paste, read, stick in the index work, or is that something, is that anything you could work on in that level and then say, okay, we have, here's the first pass, and having just worked on it, I see the following gaps.
And try to do that.
Okay, and then if you get blocked or something, but you know Jay now.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I'm not trying to punish everybody for raising issues by getting them to work, but you have an interest in it and just went through the experience, so you'd probably be one of the better people to say, okay, we got everything they have now. It took us 2 days to do it, and I still notice the following big gap. Then you don't necessarily have to do that big gap. You come back to us and talk about it. Say to Cinder and the same gap. What can we figure out?
Yeah, and let's us coordinate.
I mean, there are too many things that come up where everybody recognizes the need, and then because we can't do it perfectly, we don't do anything in that cycle. So I'm trying. That's why I said put it in terms of making progress.
And it really does help to have someone with fresh eyes who doesn't know what they knows what they don't know. Because we don't know what we don't know. I personally.
Well, right. You go like, oh, this is obvious, and it's totally obscure. That nobody would ever think of, but because you've been here forever, it seems like common sense.
Yeah. So someone who's recently had to bang their head against the wall and knows what all the gaps are. That person to put together at least the skeleton, and then if we need help with what actually goes in the blanks, we can help with that. But there's the whole other question of how the hell do you build a third-party TI system?
Well, that
seems like a major issue.
That's a bullet on this off of this page that turns into a major thing itself.
Yeah. Okay. And that seems worth discussing, if not now.
No, I agree. So, do any of you Cinder guys know anything about that now? I mean, we used to have there were people who worked for HP, as I recall, who were very active in the community in the QA team, OpenStack QA, and they had pages and guides out there, and they had help sessions. I mean, there was a mandate for people to start doing third-party CI. So at that time, there was community support for developing a third-party CI system. You could go ask questions on a certain channel and so on. And that's kind of withered away.
Yeah, so we used to do meetings like weekly, like office hours, and then like working group things to get like working on the upstream like OpenStack CI, like public modules and things like that.
Right.
I think a lot of the vendor contributors like myself kind of wandered off and did other things, and then the kind of like the infra core, like the folks that were doing that were with HP. They assigned other tasks.
Right.
There is still an OpenStack CI channel that has people that are helpful in there.
Oh, okay.
But it is a waning group.
It's minimal. Yeah.
How are our links that we have off of the Cinder page?
It's all still valid. So all the links and everything's still there. The biggest problem is that like a lot of it uses like the official, you follow the links, you're gonna go try and deploy Nodepool and Zool. the third-party CI, the last version of that, is like a year diverged from the upstream Zool v3 stuff, and they don't plan to support that other thing. Right? You go ask Clark, and he's gonna be like, "No, we don't do that."
So what are new Cinder contributors actually doing for new driver CIs now?
I haven't seen
They're
any.
using
but-
Zool v3, presumably.
Well, are
No,
they,
it's
or
not.
that would make sense, but do they have?
If they're doing that, they're like way out in uncharted
Because
territory.
I'm not sure what we.
I think.
Didn't you go through this recently?
Yeah. What did you do?
For setting up the third-party CI?
Yeah, Gotham helped you to copy NetApp.
So yeah, he helped me with that, but we already had a Zool set up for previous Cinder driver with 2 jobs for iSCSI and SC. We sort of migrated the job for Manila and just changed it gradually until it became a Manila job. I mean, I used the template for Manila, but sort of merged it.
Based on was that Zool v2 or v3?
Not sure actually.
Does it use Ansible?
I mean, because you guys haven't. Correct me if I'm wrong. You would know better than I, but NetApp CI probably hasn't migrated to Zool v3.
No, he hasn't.
I don't think anyone has.
And pardon?
No.
Yeah, I was going to say, and we're all just doing that with our normal gate jobs, which is easier than migrating the whole CI system.
You really need each blow first.
Our legacy jobs we're switching over gradually, so I would be highly surprised if anybody's done Zool for it. Yeah.
The other like valid option is the like little SOS CI forks that is like, so John Griffith has one, Sean McGinnis has one, and Matt Smith has one, and they're all like.
So maybe refresh for people.
Yeah, but the question is, do that still work today?
A lot of
Their drivers are still in trees, so
I mean the setting up.
Yeah,
the,
John's was up because they don't support things.
Yeah.
Yeah, did you hear? We have several conversations going at once. Sorry, Gotham's and Shing are listening right now, but it would be impossible if they were. So Eric just said something kind of important about the SOS CI.
No, I was saying that some of those, at least the last time I looked at some of those tools, they don't support a lot of stuff that is expected to happen with CI jobs on Garrett. If you have series of patches and depends on other projects, all that stuff.
Even do a lot of the Zool and node pool deployments there from a forked version like 2 years ago don't either, right? Like, I don't like my CI, pure storage CI can't do cross project dependency stuff. We just don't test it.
Yeah, I don't know. That's some expectations.
Well,
it's nice to see how those things do
It'd be
that.
a really nice thing to have. The question is whether it can be available to third-party driver developers, reasonably.
It's not a huge concern for most third parties.
Yeah, but I mean, if we had some emerging Zool v3 infrastructure and guide to how to use it, and it gave people that, we would be all for it. But I don't think it's there yet.
So does Zool v3 get any closer to letting us just have a thing that says download this template and set some options and spin it up?
No, it gets way worse. You have to start deploying with Zool. It gets more complicated for a third-party CI to set it up.
So should we be shipping a VM image or something? Or?
Probably.
Yeah, it seems like there's a big gap there that we've never adequately filled. I don't really know why.
If we as the upstream community want vendors to continue running CI, then we owe it to them to do something. Right?
But the problem is it's just Cinder and Manila and potentially Neutron, but Neutron's backends are out of tree and totally different anyway. So it's really Cinder and Manila that's the upstream community that has some interest in this, right? And we need to make Thingy do it because he got all this stuff going. Required to do everybody. But
in Cinder, a lot of the guys already jumped through the hoops, but a couple of years ago in Cinder, when we said you have to have third-party CIs, it took a lot of people a lot of time to figure out how to do it.
If a new guy showed up today with a new driver and he was like, "Please help me," and the answer is, "We can't help you."
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering is what. Can we actually make that better now?
Well, I think we can.
I think we need to think about it. I mean, for the health of OpenStack and keeping people's interest and vendors' involvement, we need to
have the bar be reasonable for participation, as well as the gains from participating. When we talk about the gains from participating, the stuff about running outside OpenStack, running with container workloads, that comes in play too, to make. What needs to be worthwhile to a vendor to do it and to stay involved and stay healthy. But
one of the alleged benefits to the upstream community of the third-party CI requirement was supposed to be that it would make vendors more involved with the community and wanting to be integrated and solving some of these common problems. But I don't know if that's actually happened.
Yeah, as much as Duncan could tell us or Thingy could say that was going to be the effect over and over, empirically, it's not been the effect. I guess is what I want to say. Is the CI by itself is a cost that the vendors have to put in. And we, so there are various aspects. One is, increasing the benefits to them of remaining involved, which is a kind of separate conversation. But we're talking right now about streamlining and reducing the cost of involvement.
What's the benefit to us as an upstream community?
Of having vendors involved and participating?
No, of the third-party CI.
The main benefit was supposed to be that we know that the drivers actually function.
Yeah, right. Or at least that people are still working on.
And that we can change code and know that we aren't breaking the drivers when we change the code.
Yeah.
Which is still a goal that Cinder has trouble meeting.
Yeah, it's not clear that it works as well in that regard as it should. I mean, if we're a downstream distributor, it's not sufficient. We're going to need certification or whatever anyway. But.
Well, okay, the call. If we're getting the benefit and we want to keep getting that benefit, then we have to have a way to help. Waste everyone's time.
Well, the other aspect of this is we have several backends now that always fail CI, or almost always fail CI. So that fits with the question of, is it, we haven't kicked them out of tree.
Do you guys do the phase unsupported before they get kicked out of tree?
We don't kick them out of tree.
Okay.
What we talked about doing, what we haven't yet done, is have a nice web page or something that shows clearly the performance. But this code's here, no one's maintaining it.
Yeah.
This code's here, it's not passing CI. And these guys always pass CI.
If you look at the Linux kernel, there's a page called like maintainers that lists every driver in the Linux kernel and the status of that driver. And some of them say this is complete crap.
Yeah.
But but we're leaving it here. Use it at your own risk.
And that's almost better, I think, because what we found at Cinder is a few times we'd kick drivers out, fix them, and bring it back in. And it's kind of a giant headache for everybody involved on every side of this scheme. But I don't know.
Somewhat really related, I'm thinking of adding a periodic job that has no changes, no real changes.
So I wanted that
that we do a baseline on, and if it's all red for a particular back end, that's useful information, that it's not passing.
Sean did that run a little while ago and went, oh shit.
Well, I see that.
But in publishing, I mean, the idea is not to shame, but to share information so that people can make informed decisions.
Shame.
And then it would be good to have CI, in my view, and you can see what people pass. So I want to have CI still, not with the aim of kicking people out, but
is the benefit worth the cost of having to handhold every new driver vendor? That cost is going to fall on somebody.
Well, Gotham helped a lot, but we didn't exactly handhold them. He stepped up and figured out how to get it done. I'm for reducing that cost if we can figure out how to do it.
I mean, maybe the current system's working, but if Gotham were to get reassigned or get by a bus,
working with someone,
who would do it?
Just hypothetically. Yeah, no, it's a good question. I don't know. We're touching on a lot of hard issues right now that they're not totally tractable at the moment. I guess what I want to start with, I think we need to come back to them, and if anybody has any real insight now, let's not quit. But what we did get out of this is that we should go on and do that document. We should point to the existing CI documentation, and then we should try to identify gaps, though that can include looking at the actual existing documentation for CI and getting your assessment as a recent person's been through it. Did I even use it? Would I use it? If I were to do it over again, would it have been useful?
Yeah, maybe if we wait until, or at least wait until the next someone start to build the CI, because they will know exactly what the problems they will have, what documentation is outdated, because it doesn't. If you get the documentation and look, and we will not be able to understand.
I think how do we know when the next one will start? Maybe they will come after the CI will be ready.
Yeah, but you also have a fresh enough view that you can at least give us a candid assessment, like a paragraph, as it were, of here's the existing document would be I just did it, and it would actually be of no use to me, or it would have been limited use, or without Gotham also holding my hand.
Yeah.
I would have been totally lost, or whatever, I mean, just your honest assessment of where we are. And then, yes, if we have a new driver coming in, now maybe we can buddy up and not necessarily stick Gotham with the job. But,
and maybe at this point to have like high-level steps to build all the CIs, and in this guide, high-level guide, all the links to what the documentation that we have today. And when you have someone trying to build a CI, you point to that documentation, and then we try to work with this person and update the documentation and the links that already exist.
And Patrick's doing a new driver. I'm not trying to saddle you with this. I'm offering to kind of partner in a way. You already know how to do CI. You have very experienced view of it. I mean, this guy has as much background this guy has as much background in this stuff as anyone. So I mean, it's still like a means assessment. My thought is that you guys will need to adapt your CI to do this stuff.
Right.
I don't know to what extent somebody are you doing an SOS CI?
No, it's the node pools.
You're doing the node pool stuff. So I don't know to what extent. Maybe we can just have a conversation, some sort of sidebar meeting. I can participate too in Gotham or whatever. We can get whoever's interested, but have at least the two of you involved, where you've recently done it, as you're doing it or as you finish. This time, you're not going to have problems because you've done it before.
There's always problems.
Yeah.
You like look at the CIs wrong and they follow them great.
Okay.
All I was trying to say earlier, I think it's worth making a concise statement of why we care. Right.
Sure.
So there's a whole question of the costs of how hard it is and what we can do.
What is the benefit?
And we don't have a good way of drawing a line around that, but we can draw a line around
why we care.
Because if we're doing it just because we've always done it, that's the worst reason to do something.
Correct.
So correct. We should at least agree on why we think it's a good idea to keep doing it.
I see what you're saying.
And then when people say, why the hell do I have to do this? We can say, here's why. Reason 1, 2, 3.
So are we actually assuring that the contract between the manager and the driver is fulfilled? Is that too strong a statement? Does CI get us that?
Not part of it. It's part of there.
It gets us more assurance. It gets us a likelihood.
If we had better scenario tests, it would. And if the third-party CIs were running those scenario tests, and the quality of our scenario tests is not where they need to be. And most of the third-party CIs don't actually run the scenario tests. I don't believe. So. If that's a benefit we want, we might go back to everyone and say, hey guys.
Well, I was taking a first stab that if somebody would sat me down right now and said, here's your Manila test, why do you have CI? That's probably what I would have written down as the answer for why we have CI. I think you're doing good sort of, Socratic thing here of asking us why you're doing it. Please reflect on it. Don't just say you're doing it because your parents did it. Are there other candidate answers that people have here? I mean, I think it's worth discussing this issue.
Well, the one I said is you want to do the big code changes and actually which is super important in Cinder where we have a somewhat loosely defined driver interface. So we really rely on that kind of thing to be able to do that.
Especially I feel like projects like OS Bridge, where it becomes really valuable, where like you change the way you do an iSCSI attachment.
Right.
All the drivers work a little bit differently.
And there's a lot of gaps to look at there still. Whether
Well, and that's a good one because it's a benefit to the backend, the vendor or the owner of the driver as well.
well, yeah, because we can make upstream changes, and since we at least attempt to be nice, we can, try and not break their drivers if we know it's going to break.
If it's a benefit to the vendor, then it wouldn't even be a requirement from us. It would just be self-evident they should do it for their own benefit. Right?
Some things are win-win. I'm just saying it's also a benefit to us, and we want to require it, but it's nice to be able to point out that this is in like self-interest as well, because it might not be a short-term obvious interest.
There's a big project interest too in Cinder for these to test features that aren't supported by any of the reference drivers that run in upstream infra CI.
Yeah.
Because things like consistency groups are only tested in third-party CI because that's the only platforms that support them. I imagine Vanilla is going to help with some of those.
It's already happening.
Yeah.
Some things that are not supported by any third-party drivers.
Yeah. So that's another. For sure.
I was making notice of where else I did that. So we had the goal was not really getting filled with the contract. Sure, assurance of the contract, but we're protecting the driver when we make changes. And then you just said test driver specific or non-universal.
Yeah. There's also the angle of people other than the owner of the driver making changes to the driver, which actually happens a lot in Cinder.
Yeah.
And they're very important for validating those cases too.
I mean, we basically, for Cinder reviewers, it's like if you have touched the NetApp's driver, whoever you are, we're not going to merge it unless it passes the CI. Same for EMC, same for StoreWise, all of them. That's. I mean, because I know that it's not terribly reliable for all patches, but it should at least pass for all patches. That's how we use it.
Well, no one has ever changed set logging with us. It's a popular driver. So team photo is, we're supposed to be downstairs in 10, 12 minutes. So why don't we take a break to get at the registration desk at 3:10?
So should I call it up?
Yes, and if you want to do that now, that'd be awesome. Thank you. Downstairs at 3:10 or registration at 3:10.
How many are we? How many are we? Like,
right now, we have how many people on the Etherpad?
10 people in the Etherpad.
11, so maybe say a dozen because that's an easy number to remember.
Yeah.
So yes, it's meet at the registration desk because we get escorted down to the pitch. You photo taken and escorted back. And they told us registration desk finish at 3:10, and there are 10-minute windows, so they must walk us down, put the shot back up. But and feel free to join the team photo. You don't have to have been at Manila meetings regularly during the cycle or anything. You don't feel obligated, but feel free to join us. There's Manila's a happening place to be, and I have an interest in pushing that perception.
So in other words, you would like me to come?
Yeah, come on with us, Jay. You can come into our meetings and stuff. We're doing a lot of cooperation.
I do my best.
That's why you're looking very trim and visible. You can that time on the football field. Yeah, I'm done. Then you're of course required. It doesn't sound required to be in the photo.
one different clothes if I wanted to. And I can just like this one. But
Please, notice for the photo record.
Okay, so
You don't have to, pardon me, you know, don't go off again. We like to be able to say, oh, we had an operator with a little cloud there. I'm sorry.
Yes,
that's done.
It's done, thank you. You've proved your value in many ways to the project already, thank you.
Thanks.
did you say we have a reservation?
Yeah.
I think it's awesome.
Sure.
Yeah, I should be able to, it's 10 minutes.
Yeah, so you'll be,
you're gonna leave the bridge off?
I don't know who's gonna run in here and steal a bunch of computers. I don't know who's gonna run in here and steal a bunch of computers.
Well, now that you mention it.
thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so we know it's wrong.
Good idea.
Anything's missing.
Hey, who else had that good idea?
You guys have your own channel.
Yeah, we do.
The wall run channel.
Yeah.
Is Walt back to being the AV guy?
Yeah.
You record everything. So way to pop the door.
Well, that's. But there are a number of laptops and we're using not to.
Yeah, and not while we're not here, but while we are here, if we need some airflow.
Oh, but that door can open out to the pitch.
Does it really?
Yeah. Well, they left it open unlocked for us. They don't normally do that, but they're.
I think not that one, but that one is unlocked.
Yeah.
Okay. Quite nice too. I've been wondering what those grow lamp type lights are out there.
I think they're grow lamp type lights.
Yeah, that's exactly.
I mean, is it because there's not enough sunlight this far north to grow the grass?
Yep.
They need supplemental sunlight.
You have to fool it. Well, you have to fool it into thinking that this is a good time to grow. And in fact, it is not normally. But I mean, I haven't really watched, but I'm presuming they're robotic.
No, they actually roll them around by hand.
Do they really?
Okay. Yesterday, those were over on this side. These guys out there putting the sod patches in.
I just assumed they were motorized, but doing it themselves.
Nope. One of them's not even.
It is interesting. Yeah, look at how they're patching that one area right there.
Yeah, they cut out a rectangle and they put an awful sod piece.
These professional grounds crews are quite efficient in what they do. They're, you know, like I've been on a number of. Well, did you remember Fenway, like in Boston? You know, you don't even bother thinking about getting on the field.
Oh,
you know, but no, that will not be occurring.
There was an Ohio State game last season where during one of the plays, there was a field malfunction, like a sod patch got torn up right on the end zone during like an end zone push. They had to stop play for about 5 minutes while the grounds crew came out and like repaired the field. And they said this had never happened on like a televised game before, but like there was some sod patch that just got loose, and so these guys were out there. They were like pouring these rubber pellets on it and hitting it with a hammer.
Oh, because it's a field turf, because it's artificial turf.
Yeah, the artificial turf. But apparently it was unsafe to play on it in the state it was in, so they had to stop the game until they could fix the field.
Yeah.
It was bizarre because the camera crew didn't know what to do because there's a game in progress. So you're watching the grounds crew basically doing this kind of stuff.
Who was the operator that was here? What company or?
I think it was Ericsson.
Okay. And they're deploying it now.
Maybe.
Picture from here. Perhaps you could take a picture of me.
Oh, yeah. What would you want? You want to be standing down there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Something like that.
Okay, the lighting is absolutely terrible. You're solid black.
Fix it in front. Well, here, if you press on B, it'll change it'll check the white balance.
Is there a flash?
There is.
Well, you can look at these and see the light is just not good.
Do you see where there's something that will adjust the white balance? So if you tap on that.
But if I tap on you, it adjusts, but it's still terrible.
Okay. That's all right.
I bet if you stood inside, you'd get better lighting.
But the problem, of course, is looking at the glass.
Oh, yeah. You just look like a patch. That's trying. Like the ones where the back is oversaturated is where the white balance did adjust.
So let's see here.
I want to go down as late as possible. Open the laptops. 308, I'm good now. Are you gonna take a photo of this?
I don't know. I'm sure if
Honorary announcing member. I mean, your name is still on the Launchpad page as the guy that created Manila. Rob Esker, created by Rob Esker.
Well, that would be you and I. Actually, that would be you and I arguing about it originally. And then that was.
Well, you were the one that happened to do the Launchpad thing. I think I did most of the other creations.
Yeah. I mean, even before that, I meant
Yeah, sparkling water? It's a very European thing.
对啊，它是记事本嘛，是吧？
纪念一下。是你来的。
Yeah. Yeah. We should go to Brazil and wow. What?
Just not go to Rio.
That's not real.
Just not to Rio.
Go to Sorocaba.
Nah, there's nothing to do. Man.
Yes.
You think I'll get robbed?
Robbed in Rio?
I think you have a big chance.
If you are lucky,
of being
you're
robbed.
only will get robbed.
If you're lucky, you're only getting robbed once.
I'll be right back.
你今晚上出去吃饭？
自己吃啊？对啊，我没有什么。
我说你就跟他。
Doors open.
我可以吃吧。
Air conditioning.
Well, thanks everybody for
Dying for the
doing
project.
this.
Giving your lives for the project.
Um,
Oh, this one's still going. We need to do something about that. You don't like it?
yeah. We will save these stickers, Victoria. But you cannot have them go to
I want to have a big one. This one is small.
This one.
I want a new one.
Democratic. I should have just been a dictator and said no.
This is the small one. I want the big one.
You voted for the vanilla gorilla.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's
What?
a different source. Oh, I'm sorry, you were talking about that.
Why?
That's
This is the son of the big one. Big Manila.
一样的都是。
Manilita?
You want the small one, large one, 180?
I want the extra large one.
I'll get full.
Which one was it?
Okay,
So, Cinder was trying to find a way to get the Cinder block approved as an official logo. That didn't fit the theme, so they.
So you chose a horse's ass.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be a donkey.
Yeah.
Totally.
I proposed the Stonehenge, which is a lot of flaws. Nobody else.
Falling out.
Who would like a small horse's ass? I also have a large horse's ass.
I want.
Yeah, why don't you take a small horse's ass?
Somebody have better fingernails now and start circulating.
Oh, you raised your hand. How nice.
Do you
Yeah, we can start
do you
circulating.
still have the old one? If you have the old one, I want it.
With the regular horse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why do you want the majestic stallion? That's not the project at all.
Yeah, it's like there's
Some implications there.
there's nothing.
Okay.
Do you want this one? Sure.
There's problems.
Oh, it's really.
哎，这个贴了以后撕下来再撕下来吗？
肯定有痕迹啊。
Where is the other one?
I think there is another small one over there.
There's a tiny one.
Oh,
贴反了吧？
oh my god, Liga.
Oh, yeah, little horse. Are you gonna leave this one open?
Yeah.
这个方向是一样的。
Little horse eyes.
Anyone else for a horse's posterior?
For Cinder?
Cinder.
Yeah. And here's a larger version if anybody wants the
Oh,
bigger
yeah,
one too.
larger. No, not the horse. I like this horse, not the one.
Yeah, that's. Oh, I've got the other one. Do you want the other one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got. In fact, you can have a bunch of them.
Cool.
The real Cinder people don't want those. I'm just saying.
Those are vintage now.
Yeah, they're worth more.
Yeah, that's like a smaller one. Is that a smaller one?
It's smaller, yeah.
Bigger one. In
Yeah,
Another one like the bigger one?
Yeah, lots of bigger ones.
Oh.
And I wonder why my backpack's so heavy.
Bigger. The bigger one.
My children may or may not have a large collection of OpenStack projects in their room. So one of my coworkers, was giving a bunch to his kids, and his kids got interested in OpenStack and then did a school project on it and all the different mascots. Any chance I could, there's a video that we could put that up on OpenStack.org, that'd be fantastic. That'd be awesome.
I remember when I first rolled out the mascots and I did the table with all the stickers.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
I'll have to confess, there's some I've just walked past.
Do we have a project with a unicorn?
Probably.
Or is it only
I
like
think
real
that the animal
animals?
must exist. I mean,
No,
proven existence.
But we have Dragonflow.
In vintage.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
They're great.
But dragons exist.
You know, like kind of.
Komodo dragon.
Oh,
Komodo
dragons
dragon.
like that, okay.
I suggest like this customer deployer facing logo, and do the development facing logo. There you go. I need to make another stash of the original Cinder block logo. That's not the original Cinder. I haven't seen
That's the modernized one.
Oh yeah.
Oh, the one,
Yeah, the like.
You don't want this.
Yeah, don't.
I need to ping John and get him to send
This is big as this one. Yeah.
the old original logo. Sean has this predates us.
All right, so our remaining topics today are some specs, and I thought we could take just a couple minutes before we start on that. Rob Esther is here, and without giving him any blood tests for testing paternity or anything, he's one of the people who's behind the Manila project from the start. And I thought maybe you could share with us how we got the name Manila, and some of the very early stuff. Take up to 5 minutes for Esther's first sentence. And then, it's an old joke between us.
History class with Robert Asker.
Just take a little bit of time.
All right. Well, what we were thinking was one day we'd want something that rhymed with Zorilla. No, simply Cinder cleverly, I guess you could say nominative determination seemed like, Cinder block. Well, what could we come up with that was somewhat similar on the file side of things?
Binder.
So it wasn't Manila the city, it was Manila the folder, an enclosure of files, right? But frankly, it wasn't our favorite first choice. There were a variety of other things we tried. Keep in mind, this was also during the time.
It was the first thing we thought of, but
That's true.
We figured it would be too boring.
And truly, you loved it more than I did. But that said, this was also during a time when one particular fairly well-known project kind of got in trouble with its name. The now Neutron project was Quantum. So we thought, well, okay, we're going to need to go do frankly, a quick trademark search to make sure there wasn't some collision with a commercial software project that would feel litigious. And there's not a lot out there in the world, frankly. you do that sort of thing. And so a lot of the names that we liked a bit, seemed sexier, so to speak, were taken.
Can you come up with a 30 or 35 names?
I don't know. I don't recall. You may have.
Long list that we assembled and sent over to legal, and they said they would do something.
Except for like a couple, and even those were like, well, maybe. Okay. Of which Manila was one. So here we are.
Yeah, I've seen that list.
There was another undocumented requirement, which was the name had to be 6 letters long, so that when we forked Cinder and did the little find replace, we didn't want to increase and blow out the column lengths, so Pepe would be upset. So we were like, well, it has to be exactly 6 characters, so that when we change Cinder to Manila, columns are all still the same.
That's true, actually. And so one other name I liked a little bit was Arcade, and Arcade more in an architectural sense. So, a corridor of columns that supporting infrastructure seemed like an interesting thing for an infra project, but that had commercial implication. Anyway, that's my recollection of it.
No, thank you. So next up, and Romana, I just put a couple things in the channel, but
Did you get the reservation
anymore.
Yeah. Did you get the reservation? Nice, thank you.
Next up, we have a discussion. Jen can tell us about the specs she has put up to add extra access attributes. She begins with the reason and the use case, the problem, and how to solve the problem. Great organization. So, but
can we check if we have Gotham or Shing on the line?
Yes.
So they can participate if they want to.
Right.
Yeah.
Who's on the blue jeans with the book?
Let's see. I'm not. Just a moment.
We specifically put these in the afternoon so that other than one to participate with the.
One second.
I know Gotham would probably just go to sleep.
Did anybody see the original Manila logo?
The what?
The jeepney?
Oh yeah, I still have. That was the. So we also tried to convince the foundation to use that, and they're like,
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so that is a play off of the actual city of Manila, which if you've ever been, there's a huge number of taxis that are basically heavily modified Jeeps from World War II. And they're very highly decorated, kind of a cool feature of that city. And so that's what that's all about.
Were you ever in the Philippines? I know you were an Army brat.
Air Force. And I was
Air
in
Force
Marines.
brat.
I didn't
Well, maybe you were in the Marines, but
No, I never. A few stories about a place called Subic Bay. They're probably not for this audience. But I'll share.
So Shing, I see that you're in the Blue Jeans panel. I don't know if you're here right now or not.
Yes, I'm here. I can see you guys.
Awesome. All right.
Hi.
We can hear you, and I don't see Gotham on right now, but we will record. The recording is going, and Shun is going to talk about the first of two specs she has to talk us through, and we can discuss. So we're starting on the Etherpad for the Rocky PTG at line 128, for those who are following along on the Etherpad.